Now look, some of the power figures on modern motorcycles are absolutely phenomenal. So here are the most powerful bikes from each of the world's major motorcycle manufacturers' current 2023 lineup, and naturally we'll go in order of power ascending. First up, we've got Royal Enfield at 47 horsepower with their Interceptor 650, and you can also get this engine in their Continental GT 650 Cafe Racer and the Super Meteor 650 Cruiser. It's just about enough power to be fun to ride, and what it lacks in white knuckle thrills, it absolutely makes up for in old school soul. It's a sweet sounding air-cooled parallel twin that's perfect for a Sunday waft through the countryside, and at £6,599 for a whole motorcycle, you can't really grumble too much. For reference, that's £140 spent per horsepower gained. Next up, we've got Husqvarna with their Norden 901, one of only 2 adventure bikes on this list, and at 105 horsepower peak, it's pretty punchy, it's very lively to ride, and it loves to power wheelie because it's got this super snappy throttle delivery. But given Husqvarna's relatively small lineup and the focus on smaller capacity bikes and dirt bikes, it's no surprise that they're towards the bottom end of this list. At 13, we've got Moto Guzzi's V100 Mandello, which is an all-new liquid-cooled longitudinally mounted V-twin, and it makes 115 horsepower peak at 8,700 RPM. This is more of a sports touring roadster than an out-and-out sports naked, and so the focus is on usable mid-range and practical torquiness, and therefore it's no surprise that peak revvy power isn't top of their priorities, and by all accounts this is still a fantastic engine that's fit for purpose. In at number 12, we've got the Indian Challenger, which makes 122 horsepower peak from its 1.8 litre liquid-cooled Power Plus V-twin. This is a really nice engine and definitely feels much more modern and revvy than the pushrod air-cooled V-twins that you usually find in their big Tourers. But naturally, for a big American tourer, this is a heavy-ass bike at 381 kilograms fully fueled. That's for the bagger version Challenger, so not even with the full 3-piece luggage. And so look, don't expect too much in terms of rapid acceleration. Now, they've just been pipped to 11th place by their great American rivals, with the Harley-Davidson Pan America coming in at a respectable 150 horsepower. This is a bit of a threshold we're crossing now into the seriously quick bikes, and it's a massive change of form for Harley, who also typically bias towards that more torquey, chugging, large capacity V-twin. This Revolution Max 1250 though, brand new for the 2020 model year, gets all the mod cons like liquid cooling, forged aluminium pistons, 4 valves per cylinder with double overhead cams, and variable valve timing, which helps to broaden the spread of torque and power across the rev range. Now, I've been lucky enough to ride this bike on multiple occasions, both on road and off, and it really is an impressive first stab at the adventure bike format, and it also does feel rather quick. In either the naked RS model or the half-fed RR, Triumph Speed Triple earns them joint 9th spot on this list with a pretty substantial 177 horsepower. And it's a massive step up from the previous gen Speed Triple, with Triumph claiming an extra 30 horsepower from this new engine, and at the same time they've shed 10 kilograms, and that gives it a 25% improvement in power to weight ratio. Absolutely more than enough bike for me, having tried it both on the road and the track, and at £15,795 for the RS version, that's actually quite a lot of power for your buck. 89 quid spent per horsepower, which makes it look like a relative bargain compared to the Interceptor 650. Now, also sharing 9th spot is one of the Triumph's direct rivals, and that's the KTM 1290 Super Duke R. Again, this one makes 177 horsepower, but being a V-twin as opposed to the Triumph's inline triple, and also having about 140cc more capacity, torque is actually up quite a bit, so 140 Newton meters peak as opposed to 125. And it's a very lively and playful engine, and it also sounds awesome, and for me, one of the best on the market in terms of grins per mile. Another step up though brings us to the current gen Suzuki Hayabusa, which was announced for the 2022 model year, and for £17,999 you get a whopping 190 horsepower from a big 1340cc inline 4, and also plenty of torque with 150 Newton meters peak. Now, this thing is long, low, weighty and cushy, and so you can just just tuck in behind the windscreen, turn the throttle, and cover pretty substantial distances at speed with minimal effort. At 7, we've got the Yamaha R1 with its beautiful sounding cross-plane CP4 engine that makes 197 horsepower at 13,500 RPM. Now this cross-plane crankshaft is unique in that the firing intervals are uneven, and so instead of the smooth drone that you get from a regular inline 4, you get something that sounds a little more like the angry roar of a V4. But Yamaha claim the practical benefit is a strong linear torque delivery, and at just shy of 200 horsepower it sounds like plenty of power to me, but we've still got 6 more bikes to go and things do get pretty serious. At 6, we've got the MV Agusta Brutale 1000, which comes in a more affordable RS spec at a lowly £25,000, or you've got the fully tricked out Bling Components carbon clad RS version at £32,000. But both get their 998cc inline 4 and it makes 208 horsepower at 13,000 RPM. And despite not having the Yamaha's cross-plane crank, this one still sounds absolutely fantastic to me. Now I've ridden both the RS and the RR, and they're both ballistically quick, although you do feel like most of the fun is towards the top end of the rev range, which is more seldom accessed when you're riding on the road. So not entirely day-to-day practical, but they do make up for it in desirability with the sort of exotic design flair that only MV Agusta can pull off. Just edging it into 5th place though, we have the BMW M1000RR Homologation Special, which makes 212 horsepower from its inline 4, and it comes in at £30,940 starting price. These bikes are absolutely stunning too, and they had a big visual update for 2023, and it includes a whole host of carbon bodywork if you go for the £5,000 M competition package. The front end looks particularly striking to me with the big carbon winglets and the carbon brake disc covers, and then much of the engine development has trickled down from their World Superbike program, and this thing is a proper screamer with peak power made at 14,500 RPM and the red line arriving at 15,100. Similarly peaky at 4, we've got Honda's CBR 1000RR Fireblade with a couple of more horsepower at 215 for the same 14,500 RPM. Now this one will set you back £19,999, which looks like a bit of a snip next to the BMW, although I reckon personally that it's worth saving up the extra for the 30th anniversary edition, which has this retro-inspired paint job which I think looks absolutely incredible on this bike. Into the top 3 now, and we've got the Aprilia RS V4 1100, and it nudges 217 horsepower at 13,000 RPM, and I think this might edge the R1 for the most awesome sounding bike on this list. Now it's a 1099cc V4, and this bike is surprisingly inexpensive for this end of the list. You've got the standard RS V4 at £18,000, and then at £23,000 you've got the upspec factory version, but you don't get any more power. It's the same engine, just some fancy chassis components like the semi-active suspension and forged aluminium wheels. Still, at 18 grand and 217 horsepower for that standard RS V4, believe it or not, it has the best pounds per horsepower ratio on this list, and I think that's quite impressive. Not to be outdone by the competition though, Ducati can beat that peak power figure by some margin with their bonkers Panigale V4R. This is basically their race homologation special, and it will set you back a massive £38,999. But to be fair, it does make some serious power, and so in stock form it will do 218 horsepower at 15,500 RPM, then add the £7,500 Akropovich titanium race exhaust system, and it rises by almost 20 horsepower to 237, and then on top of that you can add a special shell oil developed for this bike which reduces internal friction by 10%, and that gives this bike another 3.5 horsepower, which takes the grand total to 240.5 horsepower peak. Absolute madness. But nothing compares to the £50,000 supercharged Kawasaki H2R, an absolute feat of engineering that makes an incredible 305 horsepower on the dyno, which completely blows away any other bike on this list. But on top of that, with the effects of ram air when it's on the move, they say peak power increases to a phenomenal 322 horsepower at 14,000 RPM. Safe to say it's top dog here by some margin, but as always, I'd love to know which bike on the list you'd like in the garage garage, so do let me know down in the comments below. And we've mentioned a few nice sounding bikes on this list, so if you want to hear the top 10 for 2023 as voted for by my subscribers, then click on the link here for the full video. Hit subscribe if you're not already for more videos like this. Many thanks for watching today, and we'll see you in the next one.